Hello, my name is Dr. J. Val-Addo, and I welcome you to Insights with Dr. Val-Addo. Today's presentation is the 15th in a series, and it is about how Africans on the Guinea coast governed themselves before the Europeans came. And we depended on the European historical account, which depict the social systems of the people of the coastland of Western and Central Africa. The purpose for this presentation is to provide a response to the false claims of former European philosophers and their derogatory statements about Africa and Africans, and also to disabuse or persuade modern Europeans, Westerners, and Africans that the statements of these former European philosophers were not true, but figment of their imaginations. As I said, we're going to talk about how Africans on the Guinea coast governed themselves, how they steered their affairs, like a driver will hold a steer and drive a car, and how they managed themselves, and how they did everything to make their life better as a society or as a group of people living together, because it's very important when group of people come together, there must be governance, there must be government, there must be social systems put in place. And they were living as tribes, as towns and villages, as groups, as states. Some of them advanced to states, and some even advanced from states to kingdoms. How did they live? They lived by putting in place social systems. And social systems are orderly arrangement of cultural and structural elements. They set in place cultural and structural elements in the society, and it was meant to be interdependent. All these were meant to be interdependent, to serve as a unit to make the society function properly so that it will not break down. And these are some of the things that the governance of the place was focused on. And so these are some historic social systems that they put in place. It has to do with government or governance. It has to do with leadership. But we're going to talk about 6 of the social systems that the early Europeans who visited the Guinea coast wrote about, and you could decipher from their writings. It had to do, 1, with organization. It has to do with established institutions. Number 3, it has to do with administration, how they administrated the place. And number 4, morality. Number 5, law and order. And number 6, safety of the people or the natives, so that the African societies will become governable, and they were before the Europeans came to the Guinea coast. First, we want to start with how they organized themselves and administered themselves in the Gold Coast and also in the Slave Coast. In terms of organization and administration, the writer Benezet quotes Smith, who was a British sent to the Gold Coast and the Guinea Coast or the Slave Coast. He stated that the Gold Coast and the Slave Coast had different districts. They organized themselves into districts, some of which kings or chiefs governed. Apart from the kings and the chiefs, there were some principal men like we have mayors in our society these days. They were called cabociers. It comes from a Portuguese word. And they were principal men who also govern others in the district, in the society. And they govern the place like a commonwealth. All of us having a commonwealth with kings, chiefs, and these cabociers. Now, how did they handle issues? In the Gold Coast and Slave Coast, kings usually appointed judges and others to be in charge of the marketplaces. So when they put the kings and the chiefs in place, they also appointed judges. You go to the government of Congo, from West Africa, you go down from Angola to Congo, they had a king and still is ruled by a king. He also appoints a judge in every particular division of the kingdom to hear and determine disputes and civil cases. Now, let's move a little bit back to Benin. From Ivory Coast, you go to Gold Coast, Togo, and then you come to Benin. Now, the Europeans esteemed the people of Benin very much. They look at them and esteem them to be the most potent, or the people with great power, influence, or effect in the Guinea Coast. So they formed themselves into a kingdom, and they were very, very potent, with great power, influence, and effect in the society. In the kingdom were considerable order put in place for government to function properly. So severely punished were people involved in theft, murder, and adultery. Benizet, the writer, quotes Babot, another European, stating that they will put to death a man and a woman found or caught in adultery, and their bodies were thrown on a dunghill and left there as a prey to wild beasts. Now, Babot adds that the severity of the laws in Benin against adultery, a man going after another man's wife, among all others that they put in place, deterred people or the citizens or the natives from venturing into adultery. In view of that, very seldom are people punished for the crime because they will not venture at all. They observed and maintained higher morality and ethics that fostered peaceful social life. Let's move to the Gold Coast and the laws that were made there. An European who came there, known as Bosman, and lived in the Gold Coast for a long time, wrote that laws in the Gold Coast were severe against murder, thievery, or stealing, and adultery. So this was how laws were used to maintain society and to uphold morality. Let's also talk about how the people lived in safety. Now, we've talked about how the people in the Guinea Coast coexisted in peace. But in addition to peace, Benizet states that the laws and customs of Africans on the Guinea Coast, particularly Gold Coast and the Ivory Coast, quote, made provision for the safety of individuals. So it was safe to live in this part of Africa because they put in place provisions for safety of individuals. And in those days, even till the time, the 50s and the 60s, you could sleep with your door open without anybody going to harm you or steal from you. So esteemed highly criminal was man stealing. that if you steal somebody, it was esteemed highly criminal. So Benezet states that, or explains that particular crime or criminal act of man stealing by quoting Babot as stating, quote, kidnapping or stealing of human creatures in the Gold Coast is punished there, and even sometimes with death. Bosman confirmed that kidnapping or abduction merited capital punishment. He stated, and I quote, man stealing was punished on the Gold Coast with rigid severity and sometimes with death, unquote. Now, briefly, these are the social systems, some of the social systems put in place to govern the coastal lands of the Guinea Coast of Africa. Now, these social systems that were put in place indicate Africans were civilized and highly enlightened group of people before the Europeans came there. How do we know that? And I will tell you two things as the major reasons. One, it was a divine human capital. The Creator put this intuition, this knowledge, these ideas into the African. So naturally, this came out of them. They never went to Europe to study from their universities on how to govern. Naturally, this thing evolved because of the African nature. The African nature, as we have discussed, was not too defiled. And the African personality, the thinking, the emotion, and the action of the African were not corrupt at that time. Naturally, it was a good personality. And it was given to them by the Creator. It was inculcated in them. It was infused in them. They were born with it naturally. And even the Holy Writ states that no person can receive anything unless it is given to him from above or from heaven. It is given to him from the Creator. That is John chapter 3 verse 27. And the Creator gave this from on high, from himself, unto Africans. It wasn't led, it evolved from within them. Secondly, it came out as a cultural element that they nurtured and they developed. Culture is a way of life. So when you are going to live your life, it comes from within you. It comes from your nature. It comes from your personality. It comes from your dignity. And they nurtured this personality and they use it as their culture, their way of life. And so it became a life development. They developed their life that way. And because they inherited this from the society, the environment they lived in, because most Africans who are dark in color lived in the Tigris and Euphrates area before the dispersion of human beings. After the dispersion, they lived there a little bit, and in particular the Akans of the Gold Coast, who lived in the Gold Coast, in the coastal towns and the interior, really migrated all the way from the Tigris and Euphrates area before the Christian era, before Christ was born, came and settled down below Libya, and then moved from there and went into the Niger Bend, or where Niger is at the moment, and they settled there and they built a kingdom. And they developed, they excelled in so many things. If you hear of the kingdom of Ghana. And so they developed this. And this went on up to AD 1330. Before even Hegel and David Hume wrote all those things about the people living in the South. They had advanced so much. And so the social systems of Africa, before the Europeans came there, dispute the derogatory statements of the European philosophers about Africa and Africans. I would like to end here or pause for a moment and to continue in the next presentation, where I will be comparing the historical social systems that we talked about to the modern social systems that is used to govern Africa at the moment. And all this information is included in the presenter's book, which is going to be launched soon. It is The Rise of Africans and African Descents to Reign in Life. And Volume 1 is about redeeming Africa. Not only should Africa be redeemed from Europeans, which we've done it, but it's not over yet, but Africa must be redeemed from Africans, those who are governing. We want to measure how they are doing, whether we are doing better or we are retrogressing. And I will do that in the next presentation. And if you need the book, inbox us, book your copy in advance, and then we will think of how to send it to you. Now, if this presentation has been an eye-opener, give us a thumb up. And if you want to continue receiving the insights with Dr. Val-Addo, please press or click the subscribe button and press the notification bell. And click the share symbol to send to others. And if you have any comment, we want you to write them down and send them to us. God bless.
He is my everything.